Hey folks, thanks for joining me again on MasterQuest. Covering these different games really has gotten me thinking about what makes a game definitive, or what a MasterQuest version of a game really is. It also gets me thinking about how many changes a game goes through before it makes its final revision. Thanks to a suggestion from a viewer, quite early on in fact, I decided to take a deviation from the usual JRPG fare and tackle something a little bit more adventurous. I'm of course talking about Starfox Adventures for the GameCube. Starfox Adventures is an interesting topic in the video game discussion sphere. It's actually a game made by the company Rare, originally titled Dinosaur Planet, and was their last title with Nintendo before being acquired by Microsoft. This is an important distinction for a couple of reasons actually. One to explain why a Starfox game is so radically different from its predecessors, and another being to explain why this game could possibly even have become a Starfox game in the first place. Some reports even say that the game was made a Starfox game to keep the title's license out of Microsoft's hands, but as you'll see later on, I have to wonder if that was actually the case or not. So Starfox Adventures is a pretty big departure from what the IP had typically been associated with at the time, that being an on-rails sci-fi spaceship shooter. And then, surprising everyone, we got an adventure game with 95% of the gameplay being an on-foot exploration puzzle-solving game with strong similarities to Nintendo's other very well-known franchise, The Legend of Zelda. Pretty radical deviation, no? Additionally, the game was given a deeper story to associate with the adventure-heavy atmosphere. This is seen right off the bat. When the player starts the game, they don't even take control of Fox or a member of his crew, they're actually taking control of a totally original character named Crystal, who's following a distress call as she chases down an ominous flying ship. In this process, she loses her staff, which will come up again later. Shortly afterwards, she ends up saving and freeing a spirit known as a Krazoa spirit before being imprisoned in a crystal. Crystal. I get it, because her name is Crystal and she's also trapped in a giant. Yes! Anyway, the game then cuts to Team Starfox, quipping back and forth, which, by the way, nice pinup calendar, my guy, about this mission to save Dinosaur Planet from the main bad guy General Scales, so the team can get paid Spaceball style. After some seriously stupid hand-waving about why Fox can't have a weapon, he, literally a few seconds later, picks up the conveniently placed staff that was previously dropped by Crystal. What ensues is a big adventure traveling across all of Dinosaur Planet to retrieve the stolen spell stones, which cause the planet to break apart, and eventually pick up Crystal's original mission of rescuing and releasing the Krazoa spirits to both save the planet and free Crystal herself. Fox will team up with a little Triceratops prince named Tricky, and the many different denizens of Dinosaur Planet being different, if you can believe this, races of dinosaurs. The Thorntails, Earthwalkers, Cloudrunners, Hightops, the stinking Lightfoots, and also the Snowhorns, which aren't dinosaurs at all. Like, what's this about, guys? All in all, it's a pretty formulaic story that is both familiar to adventure fans and at the same time very alien. After hearing the Starfox team's inclusion in the game getting so much flack about how shoehorned in it felt, I went into this game totally blind, expecting poorly written story sequences, kind of like the blaster bit, like wow, that was really dumb, to be constant throughout the entirety of the game, but honestly, it was a lot more cohesive than I was expecting it to be. They utilized the other team members in gameplay as well, where, like, Slippy gives the player hints, Peppy manages the map and lore, and General Pepper keeps track of the status screen, which is a pretty nice touch for keeping the team included. Everyone is there and accounted for. Except for Falco, I guess. Yeah, so when I started playing this game, that was one of the first things I noticed. I was like, where the falk is fucko? I was actually surprised, since I'm not actually super up to code on my Starfox lore, that this game is following the continuity set by the previous games. Falco wasn't present with the rest of the team because at this point he had actually left Team Starfox to pursue a solo career, which is pretty cool, and also really good that I looked it up because I was gonna be pissed if they did my bird boy dirty like that. All in all, really not a bad first impression from story aspects. So then, I had mentioned that this game had been likened to the Zelda franchise, and I want to talk a little bit about why that is. Well, right off the bat, the similarities are pretty goddamn obvious. One of the first things the game teaches you about, pretty much as soon as you're on foot, is drawing your weapon and L targeting. The camera follows behind the player with them using the L button to center it behind them, or lock onto a special item, NPC, enemy for targeting, with a sound and visual cue that is almost impressively copied from Zelda. The speed and game feel matches with Zelda 2, even things like going into underground caves, using bombs to blow up walls, block puzzles, quote-unquote heart containers with 4 sections, and the fact that you get a new one when you beat a boss. The warp stone is just a Scottish Deku tree made of rock. The warp sound, like, listen to this. You might think from how I'm approaching this stuff that I don't like it, and you'd be wrong. I love Zelda. It's just funny seeing such unabashedly Zelda-esque features in a Star Fox game. Like, yeah, an R-Wing was fully coded in Ocarina of Time, so maybe we've just actually come back full circle or something. One of the more interesting premises of the gameplay is the context menus, where you use the C-stick to access a spell menu, sidekick menu, and inventory menu. There is a direct pause menu for the start button, but selecting abilities and items all happens in real time, which is actually pretty interesting. Except that I also kept expecting the C-stick to be the camera and kept accidentally opening the menu, like an idiot. The spells are all fine. Fireball, freeze spray, a basic and upgraded quake, a special jump, and a disguise ability. Nothing crazy, but totally serviceable. These techniques serve as the Zelda items that are generally used to clear puzzles, along with your sidekick Prince Tricky, who joins you pretty early on. Now, Tricky is another interesting thing to talk about. I had heard a lot of people complain about how annoying he is, and to be honest, I didn't really get that from him. His voice, okay, it's really obnoxious, but he also only has like 10 cutscene lines in the game that are all really short, so you don't really have to listen to it very much. You do have to constantly feed him mushrooms that you collect throughout the game to use his abilities, and he does complain if his meter is empty, but like, I was always topping it up anyway because I don't like to be stuck in areas having to backtrack, so I literally only heard him complain about being hungry like once. You can command Tricky to stay in one spot, follow you, dig for treasure, and later breathe fire. There aren't that many puzzles that use his skills relative to everywhere else, and I was super surprised at how responsive he was. Like, I dread escort missions and partner stuff because the AI is almost always the worst, but Tricky was actually super responsive. Some of the puzzles were even, dare I say, actually pretty fun. Had this been a game I would have been introduced to in my childhood, I bet it would have been a cult classic favorite for me, like, hands down. Fox runs around in third person, but, like in Zelda games of the time, can't jump on command and must run off a ledge to jump automatically. Except he doesn't always jump off. Sometimes he does this really stupid slip thing where he like falls off the ledge and grabs it, similar to, slowly tilting the control stick and walking off the edge as a failsafe mechanic. But even if you're holding the control stick at full speed, he'll still do this option sometimes. And it basically seems like only some ledges are coded as quote-unquote jumping ledges. And then, Fox has papier-mâché ankles, so if he falls like 2 feet, he gets injured. There's an obvious Dark Souls 2 joke here, but like, I had a really long shower thoughts moment thinking about Fox taking fall damage. Like, too long. Like, the StarFox team canonically had their legs surgically removed from the knees down, and replaced with metal artificial legs to better withstand the G-forces present when piloting the R-Wing. So, Fox literally has metal legs and gets injured when jumping off a 2-foot ledge. But like, I don't know if that actually makes sense or not, and I think that scares me a little bit. Like, like he definitely can jump because he jumps off of some ledges, and he can like use his legs as legs, but they're artificial limbs designed to withstand great pressure. But also maybe they're super heavy when on foot. So, God, help, my nose is bleeding again. I really need the Star Fox fandom to save me in the comments on if fall damage is canonical in the Star Fox universe. Okay. So while I let that fog cloud clear out, puzzles. Let's talk about puzzles. I mentioned block puzzles, and there's some other Zelda staples too, like timed events and shooting targets and stuff. Okay. So the skill system in this game is pretty cool, and honestly the C-stick menu is kinda innovative in its own right, but this aiming system gives me conniptions. Basically, the target reticle is always trying to get back to center screen, so when you aim away, it's like pulling back to center automatically. If you need to aim further off screen left or right, you have to like crank that control stick pretty hard to get Fox to turn in place. It makes fine aiming dreadful. It just makes it dreadful. Basically, whenever I needed to actually hit targets, I found ways to stand in between whatever targets I needed to hit and just spam that fire button. Spray and pray, baby. There are a lot of skill tests, primarily when doing the Krazoa Spirit Shrines. Many times in the game, you'll have to rescue a spirit and take them to the Krazoa Palace to let them go. Their tests are fine for the most part, but there's one I want to talk about specifically, the third one, the Test of Fear. Oh boy, let's talk about the Test of Fear. I told myself I wouldn't get mad while writing this, but like, the test is a damn balance bar like grinding in a Tony Hawk game. Problem is, it's got acceleration built in. Just like driving a car, if you overcorrect one way, it's gonna swing wildly in the other. It is so easy to fail this stupid mission because the needle randomly jerks in the other direction without warning, especially towards the end. It jerks hard, and you basically have to be anticipating it, and then, and then, when you fail, not if, but when, you have to watch an unskippable cutscene of the failure, where the game basically laughs at you, and you get another short unskippable cutscene of Fox being sent back to the beginning of the shrine trial. Okay, the trial itself isn't too hard, it's basically 3 short speed-based puzzles, but it's easy to take chip damage, especially when you're getting impatient. In case it wasn't clear, yes, you have to redo the entire shrine when you fail the final segment. After 3 or 4 failures, some that happen instantly, this gets grading really fast. So I thought, okay, I'm emulating this. No big deal. I'll just save my state, and every time I fail, I can just start from that save state. No big deal. This challenge is bullshit! And now my game crashed, are you kidding me? So anyway, I tried this bullshit challenge for a straight 45 minutes. I don't know if it was because I was emulating and using an Xbox Elite controller with sensitive sticks or what, but this mission kept failing and the cutscene kept laughing at me and it just... So anyway, I beat the trial and moved on. I'd say this game really demonstrates the rare collectathon package. Diverse world and characters, lots of collectibles and upgrades, a lot of fun and interesting puzzles, and a couple that can go f*** themselves. Test of Fear can eat my ass, and so can the electric button puzzle and the ocean temple. No joke, I save stated here so I could use the same button layout, since every time you push the button to actually start the puzzle, it rearranges the button order. Sometimes the buttons just don't work. Like at all. Doesn't help that the cutscene itself, whenever you fail the button, is very jarring and has a loud electric noise, which is not good for my anxiety. There's a reason I don't play scary games, Alejandro! Most of the gameplay is honestly pretty fun. I had read that the combat was stale, and let's not kid ourselves here, it really is, but the overwhelming number of fights are optional, so I just ran past all of them. You also get the freeze spray relatively early on in the game, and you can freeze pretty much any, standard enemy. And once they're frozen, you can one-shot them. So combat challenges, also not really a problem. Even if they were stale, it kinda seemed like the devs even knew it, which was nice just under sheer virtue of not actually having to do it very much. I will say though, the forced lock-on was pretty dumb mechanically though, especially since that seemed to be a change they implemented later on in the game's life cycle. For people looking for a traditional StarFox experience, there is still some of that Arwing gameplay, but it is really short, and there's only a few instances of it. It is still there, though, and the game even has some different takes on the on-rails shooter segments. Gonna be totally transparent, though, that gameplay is not for me. I actually got tenosynovitis earlier this year, and playing a game like traditional StarFox is actually painful for me. Though I am ashamed to say I couldn't beat the final boss because my hands, literally gave out on me, but controversial inclusion aside, I have to say it was still a pretty cool culmination of stuff. So, were you already aware that StarFox Adventures wasn't originally supposed to be a Star Fox game? I mean, I did mention that StarFox Adventures was previously a different game known as Dinosaur Planet. What's super cool here is that a late-stage ROM of the original Dinosaur Planet, as it was being developed on the N64 actually, surfaced online fairly recently, many years after the finished game's final release. I'll include the link to the beta ROM below, but this is super cool just to look into a title that was changed so drastically throughout the course of its development. For starters, the intro is much different. Crystal is not imprisoned at the end, nor does she lose her staff. Additionally, the game was meant to be more of a 2-player buddy adventure where you swap between the 2 playable characters, and you would control Crystal simultaneously with her friend Saber. Interestingly enough, the sprite for Saber is still present in the health bar heads-up display, but in this build of the game, Saber had already been replaced with Fox McCloud, and even was fully voice-acted as such. This suggests that the change actually happened quite a bit earlier than reviewers and critics believed closer to the finished game's release. Fox referred to himself as a Royal Knight of the Lilac system, which actually got a laugh out of me, mostly because what the hell is a Galaxy Royal Knight, but also like, look at that sweet fantasy sword he was repping with before they gave him Crystal Staff. He uses it to shoot spells too, which is... okay, it's edgy, but I love the heck out of it. More swordsmen need to shoot magic out of the blade. That's just cool, yo. So a lot of the content in the main game is still present in the beta, albeit with an expedited opening. Fox joins Tricky after the opening mission with Crystal, where in the complete game there's a good chunk of more stuff in between. Obviously, all of the Arwing stuff in-game isn't present in this build, or I guess at least at the beginning, and with it being an unfinished beta, it's got performance issues and glitches. My game actually was basically unplayable early on, when a block I was pushing fell off its pathing and ended up crooked, but you can apparently 100% complete the game in this state, albeit with some cheats. They are required to finish it. If you're a fan of the original game and want to see how everything looked before
the intervention,
then this is definitely a game that you need to try out. And funny enough, in the base game, some of these story segments just kind of make more sense. Like, I might actually come back and give Dinosaur Planet the full experience someday if I can be bothered to get it to run properly, which games running properly is something I want to touch on real quick too. As is the case for games I've been recording, I was running Starfox Adventures on Dolphin with fairly high visual fidelity. I wanted to point out that this game is known for having some weird CPU issue that doesn't appear to be present with other games. I had a specific error overflow glitch that would cause my FPS to drop to 0 while my VPS remained at 60. Essentially, the game crashes without the emulator crashing, likely due to too many errors being recorded in the background. I've seen forum posts as far back as 2013 without any real resolution to the issue. I tried many different configuration settings and even earlier versions of the Dolphin emulator, and nothing prevented it. One of my runs, the game was literally only live for about 6 minutes before crashing again. If you're gonna emulate StarFox Adventures, I recommend save stating fairly often. As long as the game isn't save stated after the frame crash, like whenever it's dropped to 0, you can immediately load the state on emulator boot and get by alright. The game crashed around 10 times in my 12-ish hour run, which is pretty high considering relative time. The first time also happened unexpectedly and I hadn't saved, so I lost around an hour of gameplay. Although fortunately, even if you don't or can't use save states, you can save pretty much anywhere in-game through the pause menu, so that is nice for the time. Obviously, this means that your best results with StarFox Adventures will come from playing the game on original hardware, so that's what I recommend. Since the Dinosaur Planet beta is, well, a beta, I can't recommend that version as the definitive version either, just a really cool look into gaming history. All in all, this was a nice deviation from the usual RPGs I've been playing, and honestly was cathartic and kind of relaxing to play through. Well, mostly. I think this is a great game to play both for its own value and for its place in gaming history. There is kind of a weird pacing curve towards the end where the time between spell stones and spirits drop drastically, almost like the game was trying to get itself over with, but I didn't really mind that either since the puzzle quality was still pretty good throughout, and it didn't feel like the game was overstaying its welcome. I was able to start and finish the game totally blind in 2 sessions, so it's a good one to pick up and play for a weekend, right? If you've got any suggestions for a game you want me to play, shoot me a comment and I'll add it to the list. Maybe I'll even make a video on it. This was a fun experience for the first time, and I really hope I did it justice for the fans. What's a beloved game from your childhood? Like I mentioned last time, if I can get to 100 subscribers, I'll tackle the entirety of the mainline Persona series on my channel. That's a pretty high goal from where I'm currently sitting, so I think if I can first get to 25 subs, I'll start with the first game and then do each subsequent game for every additional 25 or something, I don't know. But if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, feel free to subscribe and let me know. And as a final shout out, please feel free to check out the lovely Cozymagic website. The artist made all of my various avatars and did a phenomenal job, so I'd love for you guys to show your support if you can and haven't already. As always, thanks for dropping by and showing your support, and for taking the time to watch till the end of the video. Till next time everyone, see you soon.